Hey, it's another great birth story episode. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hey there, before we dive into the episode, the Birth with Power Pathway launches in May. And if you're getting ready for your hospital birth, you don't want to miss it. It's the updated version of my online birth course designed to get you calm, confident, and empowered. Hop on my email list now at drnicolerankins.com/email to be the first to know when it's live. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 145. Thank you for spending some of your time with me today. On today's episode of the podcast, we have Crystal. Crystal and her husband, Gabriel, have been together for 18 years. After playing roller derby for 9 years, I think that's so cool that she played roller derby. Well, after playing roller derby for 9 years, Crystal retired from the sport and started a family. And Crystal is going to share her birth story today, actually both of her birth stories, because you have to understand both in order to see the differences about what can happen with birth. So Crystal and Gabriel's first birth did not go anything like expected. She had 30 hours of labor, actually over 30 hours of labor. She ended up being transferred to a hospital from a birth center. She got an epidural when she really wanted an unmedicated birth. And she had an extended hospital stay due to gestational hypertension and a NICU stay for their baby girl. Her baby girl's doing well now, but you're going to hear about all those details. And then you're also going to hear about how her second birth was very different. For that labor, she was only in labor for 2.5 hours. And it turned out to be the redemptive, unmedicated birth that they had hoped for, including the golden hour after birth, which they did not get with the first birth. This is a really great conversation, and Crystal is super funny. She has a bit of dry humor, so I know you are going to love it. Now, as you will hear during the conversation, Crystal is a member of my online childbirth education class, the Birth Preparation course. That is my signature program that gets you calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful birth. I am going to die on the hill of saying that everyone needs childbirth education. I feel like my voice went up an octave there. It is so important to have childbirth education, particularly in the backdrop of a system that can sometimes take a patriarchal approach to birth. It takes away power from women over what happens in their bodies and for some can also be racist. And being educated about labor and birth, especially how it happens in the hospital, is one of the most important things that you can do to advocate for yourself. And that is what I do with the birth preparation course. You can check out all the details at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. Now, even if you don't choose the birth preparation course, I want you to choose something because, again, I'm a die on the hill of everybody needs childbirth education. And I know sometimes folks say, oh, I listen to your podcast. And yes, this podcast is great, but it's not enough. You need that deeper dive of structured childbirth education. So again, check out the birth preparation course at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. All right, let's get into the conversation with Crystal. Thanks so much, Crystal, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I'm so excited to have you come on and share your birth story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your family?
Okay. My name is Crystal, and I am married to my husband, Gabriel. We have been together for 18 years and married for 5. And we have 2 kids, Freya, who just turned 2, and Rocco, who is 9 weeks.
Love it. Love it. Oh, you have a brand new baby.
Yes. Yes.
And did I see correctly? You're in Asheville, North Carolina?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
I love Asheville. It is so beautiful there.
It really is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We did a vacation there a couple years ago, and it's like, oh, we need to come back. It's a really lovely, lovely area of North Carolina.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah. So, in order to understand your story for your little sweet baby, we have to actually know about both of your births because the first one influenced the second one. So, let's start with what happened with your first birth. What was your pregnancy and prenatal care like?
Sure. So I've always been really adamant about having a quote unquote natural birth, being medication free. There was a really long time in our relationship where we didn't even want to have kids, but we would always talk about birth for some reason and say, oh, well, if we ever have kids, I'm not getting an epidural, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So we started out with my first pregnancy. I found out I was pregnant, pretty quickly, probably about 4 weeks in, and pregnancy was pretty normal. We, the regular morning sickness, and then in the first trimester, and then it was pretty average after that. But we wanted to go to a birth center. So I was seeing midwives at a local birth center, and we really, really enjoyed that experience, and I was very excited about it. I read like every book I could find about having a natural birth or having a medication-free birth, and I was just gung-ho about, there's no other option. I'm having a medication-free birth, and it's going to be beautiful and great. And I listened to like every podcast I could find on my podcast app about birth stories.
Right.
And I just, I really thought I was going to do great. I always consider myself to have a high pain tolerance because I played roller derby for 9 years,
which is so cool, by the way.
Thank you. So I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can get knocked down on the track. I can have a baby. But anyway, so we went through the midwives, and we really, really liked our experience there. We really felt like they were very attentive, and our appointments were a good length. We never felt rushed, and my husband came to all the appointments with me. This was in 2019. So This is pre-COVID. My husband came to all the appointments with me, and we really, really enjoyed it.
You had a clear idea of what you wanted. And it sounds like to prepare, did you read like all the things or like?
Yeah, I read, Ina May for sure. I read Ina May Gaskin. I read that book, and there's another book, The Mama Natural, and a couple other books. I just read through them. I was like, I've got this.
Gotcha. And then other than wanting to have an unmedicated birth, is there anything else that you wanted for your birth experience?
Not really. I wanted to give birth in the pool, at the birth center. So I wanted to have a water birth. I just had this very idealistic, vision of how my birth was going to go. Obviously you can tell how I'm talking about it. It didn't go that way.
And I'm curious, did you talk about that with your midwives at all? Like what you wanted?
Yeah, we just discussed, I made a birth plan, and I was like, I want to have my birth in the pool and just a gentle, natural, unmedicated birth. And that we were all on the same page there.
Gotcha. And then did they ever give you any indication that maybe you need to prepare for the possibility that things may not go exactly that way?
I took a birth education class that was actually at the birth center, and they discussed that. The woman leading it was very open about, don't be idealistic. It's okay if you need to go to the hospital, or you might have to go to the hospital. But I blocked all that out because I was going to have an unmedicated birth in the pool at the birth center.
Gotcha.
In my head.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get into it. What was your labor and birth experience like?
Yeah, let's see. I also wanted to mention too, I said I had a pretty normal pregnancy, but I had one wacky thing that happened when I was 38 weeks pregnant.
What happened?
I was out in the yard. I was nesting, so I had to clean everything. So I was out in the yard trimming all the bushes, and apparently there was a yellow jacket nest out there, and I trimmed a bush that was next to the yellow jacket nest and got swarmed by bees. and went running through the yard screaming. But I had 22 bee stings when I
Oh
was 38
my
weeks pregnant.
God.
And I
Crystal, are
have
you
never been that
serious?
scared in my life.
Oh my
It was
God.
insane. I ran through the yard screaming, and my husband was like, "What happened?" And I ran straight into the house, into the shower, and turned the shower on to get the bees off of me.
Right.
And it was pretty crazy. I've had a bee sting before, but having
Not
your whole body
22. Yeah.
radiating, and I was so afraid I was going to go into labor and with this incredible pain of bee stings. But luckily the baby held off. So
Okay.
that was
Okay. That was incredibly scary, I bet. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it was wild.
And it just sucks, like, period.
Oh yeah, it took a couple, the first day it was radiating pain, and then the next couple days it was just itchy. So
Gotcha.
I was like, of course, this is so
Of
crazy.
course. Of course. Okay. So let's talk about your labor and birth.
So I went into labor on my due date.
Okay.
I was having some Braxton Hicks throughout the day, and I was just, I was ready for the baby to come by that point. I didn't mind being pregnant, but it was starting to be a little uncomfortable. So I decided to take a bath that night. And right around 9 p.m. while I was in the bath, I got my first contraction, and I was like, oh, that is not a Braxton Hicks. That is something painful. So I got out of the bath and I kind of walked around for a little bit, and I kept getting these contractions. They just came on fast and furious. I had that basically within the first hour, we were already at like the 411 that people talk about, So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have one of those crazy precipitous births. And so we waited it out for a little bit. My husband was texting my doula, and she told us to wait it out. It's our first birth. It might take a little longer. And right about 1 a.m., I think I was like, we need to go. I'm in a lot of pain. So we went to the birth center, got there, it's not too far. We probably got there around 1:30 after we got everything in the car. And of course, riding in the car was no fun when you're in labor. But we got there, and they checked me, and the person who checked me said, "Oh, you're about 6 centimeters. We can go ahead and start filling up the tub," because I wouldn't have the water birth.
Okay.
And I was like, awesome.
Right.
So they put me in the shower, or they said I could take a shower if I wanted to. They had like a nice hot shower there, and that felt so good. And I was just like so excited to get into the pool. And so I labored in the shower for a little bit. I started throwing up a little bit, and I was just so convinced I was in transition. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have this baby like before dawn. I was so excited. So I go to get in the pool, and, I had heard so many podcasts where people said, oh, it's like a natural epidural. I got into the hot water and it was so good. And I did not have that experience. I got into the water and it was just like, well, now I'm just in water and in pain.
I'm sorry. I'm trying.
Now I'm wet and in pain. Like, this isn't what it's cracked up to be. Right. What were those people talking about?
Right. Okay, Crystal, you are hilarious. Right. Okay.
So I was in the pool, and I was like, okay. So I labored in the pool, and my contractions actually started slowing down a little bit, and which I was fine with at the time, because I was like, man, these hurt. And so I got out later on. There was like a shift change with the midwives, and they were like, well, let's check you again, or I asked to be checked. And the person checked me and said, okay, you're right around 3 centimeters.
Oh.
And I said, no. I was a 6 when I got here. That's why I got into the pool. And then they came and said, we actually had a midwife in training check you, and the person didn't check behind them, and we're really sorry, but you are actually closer to 3. And I was like, oh my gosh, it just it broke my brain. I was like, here I was thinking I was in transition, like about to give birth, and now I'm only like around 3 centimeters. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that kind of, it was very hard to digest that mentally.
Yes. And on top of still dealing with all the pain and all, like, it was,
right.
That's just a lot.
Right. Yeah. So I labored there. That was like 8:00 in the morning. So I labored there at the birth center pretty much all day. And by the afternoon, I actually got to about 7 centimeters, but 7 real centimeters. And, but I started to stall there. I did not progress from there. Probably about mid-afternoon until into the evening, I was still at 7, and I was walking around and going in and out of the pool and going in and out of the shower and laboring on the toilet, everything.
Right.
Everyone's trying to help me do something. And so I had, there are a couple of things at play here. I think one of them was many years ago, like 10 years ago, I had a LEAP procedure, which is, well, you know what it is, but I'm just going to
absolutely.
reiterate.
Yeah, please. Yep, explain. Yep.
Yeah, it's like precancerous cells on my cervix were burned off, and that it was a simple procedure many years ago, but apparently that left some scar tissue on my cervix. So they were concerned that the scar tissue was the reason that I wasn't progressing. So they manually broke up the scar tissue while I was in labor to try to release that, which of course was very uncomfortable, and tried to help me progress. But I was still just stalled.
Right.
And I stayed stalled at 7 centimeters for a very long time. So in between this time, there's like people coming and going from the birth center, like coming in and having babies and leaving since I've been there. So they come back to me and they say, okay, here's the plan. We're going to have a baby, by tomorrow morning. So we need to, they're trying to encourage me. We're going to get this baby out. So we're going to try some breast stimulation with a breast pump. And then we're going to break your water if that doesn't work. So I said, okay. So I tried the breast pump, and that definitely got my contractions back on a schedule, because my contractions had slowed down a little bit. But I did that for a little bit, and they checked me and they said, oh, you're still at a 7, and we can break your water if you want, but it's going to make things more intense. And I said, okay, at my, I figured things were pretty intense already. And I was like, they can't be more intense, right? It's fine. So silly me. So they broke my water, and I went to get back into the shower, because that's where I was laboring, because the shower felt the best. And the contractions just came on, like out of nowhere, just so strong. I could not believe how painful they were. There's a point where I was literally clawing at the side of the shower to escape my body. I was having like an out of body pain experience, and I was like, this is wild. I can't do this anymore. So I tried to get back, and they were like, well, let's fill up the tub again. That will help. And I was like, okay. And of course we got back into the tub, and it was the same thing. I was like, now I'm just covered in water, and I'm in so much pain. So I was screaming, I need an epidural. I need to get out of here, like right now. And so we're like, okay, so we're going to transfer to the hospital so I can get an epidural. And the hospital is like right around the corner. So it's not too far, but it's not fun when you've been, at this point. I went there early Tuesday, 1 a.m. at Tuesday morning, and now it's Wednesday morning. So I've been there for more than 24 hours, and our stuff is everywhere. My husband and a couple of my friends were there, and my doula, they're all like, grabbing my stuff, trying to pack it up. And I was so gung ho about having a birth at the birth center. I hadn't really packed much for myself. And so I didn't need, all I had were pants. And I was like, there's no way I'm putting pants on right now. I'm just in this like hysterical pain. So they wrapped a sheet around me. So I'm like wearing like a sports bra and a sheet, like screaming, going to the hospital. And, I went up to the hospital, and I was just like, give me the epidural. And they said, okay, well, we have to, you have to get fluids first before you get the epidural. I was like, oh my gosh. I said, I don't have time to do that. And well, they said we have to do that. So I had to get 2 bags of fluid, but they put it on a, I don't know what you call it, like a fast.
Yeah, it's called a bolus, where it goes in really quickly.
Yeah, so they put it on that, thank goodness. So it didn't take as long as they originally said it would. And then an amazing man came in and gave me an epidural, and he said he's going to do it between contractions, and I can't move. And I was like, I can't guarantee I won't move. And he was like, you have to stay still. So, and soon as he put it in, he said, okay, it's probably going to take about 10 minutes to kick in. And by then I was just in so much pain, and I'd started throwing up again, and I was just like screaming. And I said, I don't have 10 minutes. And he was like, you'll be okay. And luckily it just, it really worked like instantly. I was like, thank you, mystery man. And I lay down, and it was amazing how I was like literally like trying to remove myself from my body. And the next minute I felt okay again.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is lovely.
Right.
So I just kind of, at that point, I just laid back, and I think I fell asleep immediately, because at this point I hadn't slept since Sunday.
Yeah, you had to be exhausted. Yes.
Yeah, I'd slept Sunday night. Now it's Wednesday morning. So yeah, I kind of slept and rested a little bit, and then I was still stuck at 7 for a while. I was just stuck, just not progressing from 7 centimeters. So at one point they came in and said, we think, at this point you haven't progressed. We think you should have a C-section. And I said, okay. I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm done. I'm tired. So my husband was getting dressed out, putting the little cap on and everything to go into the C-section, and they were getting ready to wheel me in there. And my midwife had come to the hospital with us, and she was going to do vaginal seeding. So she went to check me and was like, oh my gosh, you're fully dilated. I think you can push now.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm having a C-section. She was like, and then so some other doctors came in and they talked to me because I was so tired.
Right.
And they said, at this point, it's really better to try to have a vaginal birth because the baby's in the birth canal. So we don't want to do some damage pulling them out of the birth canal through a C-section. I said, okay. And I said, but I'm so tired. I can't push for like 2 or 3 hours. And they said, well, you can try. It's okay. I said, okay. So after a little while, I think they started giving me Pitocin or something at some point. But I started pushing, and I did end up pushing for about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Time goes by fast, though, when you're pushing.
It does.
I'm sure
it does.
It probably didn't go by fast for my husband, but yeah, it went by pretty fast. But toward the end, it was getting, I thought we were getting close. I kept pushing and pushing, and I couldn't feel anything. So I had that epidural, and I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel anything. So I was just pushing, the best way I could, the way they described it to me, like what I should do. And all I can remember is my arms, for some reason, hurt so bad because I had been laboring for 2 days prior to that, like holding on to the handicap bars in the shower at the birth center, like squatting and holding on to the bars for so long. So I kept saying, my arms. And the nurse was like, what is wrong with your arms? Like, you're having a baby. It was so silly. So I started pushing, and or I'd been pushing for a while.
Right.
And toward the end, they said, okay, well, the baby's heart is starting to decel. I said, okay. So they tried to move me around a little bit the best they could. And they kept saying, oh, like it would go up a little bit, and they'd say, okay, well, her heart rate is decelling some more. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's like, it went from having like 2 people in the room to like a whole team of people in the room. And there was a doctor that the midwife had yelled to call for a doctor. And doctor came in, and everybody just, I could feel like it very serious all of a sudden.
Right.
And they're like, you need to get this baby out right now. Like you need to give it all you've got. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I've been giving it all I've got.
Right.
Like, I don't know. So the doctor did ask me if she could give me an episiotomy to help. And I said, yes, do what you need to do to get the baby out. And it took a few more minutes, and they got the baby out, and the baby, I had the epidural, and I did not feel that baby come out at all. Like, I had no idea the baby had been born. And they took the baby over, and she wasn't crying for the first little bit, and wasn't crying. And finally they got a little cry, and they had put all sorts of, like, I don't know if it was something to help her breathe. They put all sorts of little contraptions on her and basically said, here she is, Mom, we have to take her to the NICU, and whisked her away. And my husband went with them. And I was like, whoa, like what just happened?
Like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. And I was like, well, she cried. And at that point, like, I was so tired and so just discombobulated, now it's 3:40 in the afternoon on Wednesday, and I haven't slept since Sunday, and I've been in labor since Monday.
Right.
So it was 30 hours of labor later. So they came back to talk to me a little while afterward, the NICU people did, and her APGAR score when she was born was a 1.
Mm.
And I think they do another APGAR, I think 5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Her next APGAR was a 5.
Mm.
And they had taken blood and done some testing and said that she had a high level of acid in her blood.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really concerned about her losing oxygen
Mm-hmm.
during when her heart rate started going down.
Mm-hmm.
She did have the cord around her neck when she was born.
Okay.
And so they think that that contributed to it. So they actually did diagnose her with HIE,
Okay.
which is
Hypoxic and
hypoxic,
ischemic.
ischemic, yeah,
Encephalopathy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
exactly, yeah. So they diagnosed her with that, and they said that it's very concerning and very serious, but they do have a therapy for it, which right now it's they do something called therapeutic hypothermia,
Uh-huh.
which they put the baby on like a cooling blanket for 3 days,
Yep.
and they intentionally lower their body temperature to around 93 degrees. And just like they slowly lower their body temperature with hope that the brain, the concern with HIE is that the brain might swell or it might be damaged from the lack of oxygen. So the hope is that when they cool their body down, then the brain has time to repair itself, I guess. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well,
You
but
are explaining it exactly spot on. Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, at the time it was, it was a lot to take in at the time. So basically they said, okay, she's in the NICU, she's going to be on this cooling blanket. They kind of sedated her. So they said she's not going to be in pain, but she's going to be cold. You can't really touch her. You can't pick her up. Like they said, we could put our finger on there if we wanted to touch her, but don't rub her, don't stimulate her, don't do anything like that. So it was definitely pretty scary. I didn't see her until after shift change that night. So I had her at 3:40 on Wednesday, and I didn't actually meet her until probably about 8 o'clock that night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, she had a CPAP and all sorts of electrodes and stuff on her,
Right.
and all sorts of stuff.
And CPAP for the listeners is just continuous positive airway pressure. And it's just like a little bit of extra to help babies with breathing. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So that was a lot.
It was, yes. Yeah, so she was there, and they said she had to be on the cooling blanket for 3 days, and then on the third day they would very, very gradually warm her back up. They said it's very crucial. If she gets warmed up too fast, or if her body doesn't react to the warming very well, it's possibility that she could have a seizure, or it could cause some other complications. So we kind of just held our breath, for 3 days waiting for that warming up time. So it was a lot. So I was, staying in the hospital room, while she was up in the NICU. And while I was there, I started to develop gestational hypertension. So my blood pressure was going off the scales, and I had never had blood pressure issues in my life. And I couldn't believe that I was dealing with this while, I was in the hospital. Yeah, all of this, here I thought I was going to have this birth center birth and be there for, 2 hours and be home. And then here we are in the hospital. So they were giving me some blood pressure medicine and keeping tabs on my blood pressure. And then on Saturday, which is when they were supposed to start warming her up on Saturday. And then on Sunday was the day I was supposed to hold her. We were supposed to be able to interact with her and hold her. So we got to Saturday, and every day at the hospital too, every morning the nurse would say, "You're getting out today, aren't you?" And I'd say, "I don't know, I hope so." And they kept holding me. And then on Saturday they said, "Listen, your blood pressure is too high." A doctor came in and spoke with me and said, "We really want to put you on a magnesium treatment." And I hadn't, for some reason, I've listened to all these birth stories before on podcasts, but I guess I blocked out that magnesium part, and couldn't remember what it was. And she explained it to me, but she really explained it poorly. I think she was giving me the worst case scenario. So she was saying, "We're going to put you on a magnesium drip to, try to get a hold of your blood pressure." And she said, it's going to make you feel really sick, like you have a really bad flu. You probably won't be able to walk. We're probably going to have to catheterize you because you won't be able to go to the bathroom. You probably won't be able to hold your baby. and you're going to have to be on this for at least 24 hours. And I was like, what? And I just couldn't believe it, because the only thing getting me through every day at the hospital was being able to hold my baby on Sunday.
Right.
And I was like, no, like, I can't do this. I have to hold my baby. And she was like, well, there will be other, you'll have plenty of time to hold your baby in the future. And I was just like, it really broke my heart.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't, like, all I want to do is hold my baby. And my husband was getting really kind of annoyed at this point, because every day they'd say, she's getting out. And then all of a sudden in the evening, they'd say, oh no, you have to stay. We have to monitor you. So he started talking to the doctor and was asking her about, what are the odds? Like, what's the actual statistics behind this? Like, do I actually have to get this treatment? Is there any other option to go with? And she was kind of holding her ground and still requested the treatment. So we had a nurse come up she was going to put like another IV into my arm and get the magnesium started. And she came up and I was just crying and crying and crying. And in the meantime, one of our midwives had called my husband to check in, and I had gone to the bathroom, and I came back and my husband had told the midwife everything that was going on. And the nurse was in there and had heard the conversation. And I said, okay, I'm ready. And she said, we're not doing anything right now. And I was like, okay. And he got off the phone and she was like, I don't think we need to do this magnesium treatment. She was like, I've seen, she seemed really experienced. She's been there for 20 years or something. And she's like, let me talk to the doctor. We need to figure out if there's something else we can do to try to make this work for you. So we ended up talking with the doctor and the nurse, and everyone agreed that in order to let me hold the baby the next day, they would, instead of giving me the magnesium treatment, they would just monitor me, like leave the blood pressure cuff on my arm the whole time.
Okay.
And monitor me intermittently. And if my blood pressure did spike up again, then I would get medicine. So that was, it was a good meet in the middle at the time.
Right.
And looking back, I don't know how terrible the effects of the magnesium would have been. I don't know if it would have been that drastic, but at the time it just sounded like the end of the world.
Sure.
Honestly, to me, it really felt like the end.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And everybody experiences it differently, I would say. Some people do feel like crap on it. Some people don't. So yeah, there's just no way to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, all this to say, they warmed up the baby on Saturday and everything went well. They had a neurological team actually monitored her for 12 hours to make sure her brain was functioning properly. And we got to meet her on Sunday and hold her. And I got to try to let her nurse, and she started nursing right away. And it was all really great. And she was in the NICU until that following Wednesday. So she was in the NICU for 7 days, and they let her go and said, we think the therapy went really well. You won't know anything until she starts getting older, and hopefully she'll meet her milestones.
Right.
And honestly, she's been meeting every milestone since. She's 2 years old now, and she's a little crazy toddler. So I think it went well, hopefully. And so that was quite an experience.
I'm
very,
sure.
very, very different than my idealistic experience.
Like very, very different. And then well, first of all, I'm glad that you are well and that she is well. Did you have to keep monitoring your blood pressure also for a little bit?
Oh my gosh. Yes. They put me on medication that I had to take twice a day, and it was really pretty bad. It made me really dizzy. It gave me heart palpitations. It made me nauseous. I called multiple times and asked if I could be taken off of it or weaned off of it. And they made me stay on a heavy dose for about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started weaning off of it for another 3 weeks. But I didn't really feel like I could do much of anything for 3 weeks. I didn't even drive my car because I just felt so dizzy and nauseous.
Right.
And it was, I hated it. but as soon as I got off of it, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I feel normal again. Cause I wasn't sure what was postpartum. I didn't know if it was, is this how you feel when you have a baby,
right,
or is this the medication? But turns out it was the medication.
Okay. So then you decide that you want to get pregnant again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because a lot of people would have been like, "Ain't no way I'm doing this again." But
Right.
you decided, like, no, we're gonna go for this again. And then
Yes.
how did you approach things differently the second time around?
So this time, so we were definitely shaken from the first birth. It
Mm-hmm.
was, a little bit traumatic, and
A
and as
little
much as
bit.
yeah, it was, we didn't want that to happen
Yes,
again,
that
but we
was a
were
lot.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot. So we were pretty shaken, and as much as I love the birth center, and I really, really liked everyone that worked there, and I felt comfortable there, the birth center at the time was only technically doing births at the birth center. They didn't help that you couldn't have the midwife come to the hospital
Mm-hmm.
unless you got transferred there. So we said, no, we have to have a hospital birth next time, because if something happens like this again, we want the NICU team there.
Right.
And so I started going to an OB, and I actually found a local OB office that has a midwife on staff,
Uh-huh.
and I started seeing her, and it was pretty great. It was still like more of an OB office
Mm-hmm.
feel, and I got to meet all the different doctors, because you never know who's on call when you
Right.
go into labor. So I met all the different doctors, and it was it was still good. It wasn't I still miss the birth center a little bit, and every now and then a doctor would mention, because I'm older, I just turned 40. They would mention something about possible induction, or something like that, any sort of intervention, and it would kind of make me a little nervous, because I'm
Sure.
still, even though I had the hospital birth with the first one, I still wanted to have an unmedicated birth,
Right. Right.
because I
Right.
was like, oh yeah, I want to have this beautiful unmedicated birth. That's what I want. This is my redemption birth. So yeah, but the care was actually really good at
Okay.
the OB
Okay.
office.
And I mean, there's no getting around it. Birth center prenatal care is a lot more hands-on,
Yeah.
and I mean, it just is than what you're going to get in the OB office. So I'm not surprised, but I'm glad that overall it was a good experience. So what did you do
Yeah.
differently to prepare for your second birth?
For the second birth, I think I really started to process the first birth more.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about how I got stalled in labor, and I really started try to remember like how it felt and how I felt, and a lot of it was mental. I had thought that I was going to have this quick birth, but I also was very scared in between contractions. It was a loss of control. Like I felt like, I didn't know when the next contraction was happening. It was painful, and so in between contractions, instead of like relaxing, I was clenched up and like, I don't want another contraction. So I started processing how that was, and I started thinking more about like, okay, if when I go into labor, I really need to get into this and like surrender and just let it happen, and just know that, this is happening to me, or this is happening with me, and not just feel like I had that fear, that loss of control. So I did a lot of processing, mentally, trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Did you just do that on your own, or did you seek out any sort of help, or how did you do that?
I think I did that mostly on my
Okay.
own. I talked to my husband a lot
Sure.
about it, obviously, because he was there too with the
Right.
first one.
Right.
So
Right.
we unpacked a lot of it, and then I kept listening to birth stories on different podcasts, and all that stuff.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay. What else did you do to prepare?
yeah, we actually ended up purchasing your birth class.
Oh my, how did
Because I
I
was like,
not know that see, I never know. I feel like I should start asking this question when people submit, because I did not know that. Well,
yeah, I was like, we probably need a refresher just in case, because the first birth class we went to was very birth center centric,
mhm.
and I've always been a birth nerd. Like I feel like I have a really good idea of everything, many things that can happen. So I felt pretty comfortable with all the different interventions, or any, what could happen, but my husband's not as deep into it. So we watched a lot of your class together, probably a little bit. And then I will admit that I dipped off a little bit toward the end because I was just tired. I was pregnant with a toddler.
And it's a lot, and it's a refresher for you. So some of it, you may, because some of it you may not need to know, but I hope it at least prepared you more from like for a hospital birth. Like this is how it's going to go.
Yeah, I definitely watched because they kept casually mentioning induction. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to pay close attention to the induction options. And my husband ended up watching a lot of it to make sure that he knew all the different options that could happen. So he felt better going in this time than just what we had learned last time.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was good. Well, so we felt a little more refreshed and well-rounded about that.
Good. So then other than wanting another unmedicated birth, is there anything else that you wanted for this second time around? I mean, obviously to not have all the other stuff that happened as well.
Right.
But
I was very, very careful not to create this ideal picture in my head. So I wanted to be healthy. I wanted a healthy baby, and I wanted to have that golden hour. I didn't want my baby to be whisked away if I could. Not that you can help that, but I was just very much hoping that I could spend, the first, hour of my baby's life with them. So that was really my hope.
Gotcha.
But I was very careful not to put all my eggs in one basket, basically, with an ideal birth.
Gotcha. And then what was your labor and birth like as we're getting close towards the end? But if I understand correctly, it was not nearly the 30 plus hour experience the second time around.
It was not. It was, so with this one, I started again. It was the day before his due date. And, at 9:00 at night, I started having contractions, and they came on fast and furious again, just like with the first birth. But this time I was, so much of it is mental looking back. So this time I was like, there's no way I'm, very progressed. This is how I felt last time. And last time I was 3 centimeters. And so I ended up going like hiding in our bathroom. And laboring in there just very, very quietly. Like with my first labor, I was very loud and trying to do like moo sounds and all this stuff. And like in this labor, I just breathed. I was using like a contraction app that would like help you breathe through it. And I was very, very quiet. And, eventually my husband came in. My stepmother actually had texted me at one point because she knew that I was having a lot of Braxton Hicks and I thought I might be going to labor soon. And she texted me and kind of like snapped me out of that labor land and was like, hey, last call. Are you okay? Or are you going to bed or what's going on?
Right.
And I was in between contractions. I just sent back like, text my husband, like text Gabe. And so, because I was just lost and I didn't even know how much time had gone by. So my husband came and was like, hey, should we go to the hospital? And at that point I was, I guess at this point, looking back, I think I was in transition, but I was at my wit's end. And I said, I don't care what we talked about. I'm getting an epidural as soon as we get there and I'm about to throw up. And he was like, oh, okay. He's like, I've got the car packed.
Right.
We're ready to go.
Right.
And so we ran out to the car and got to the hospital. And I really, really did not think. Like I was like doing the math in my head. I was like, okay, it's 20 minutes to the hospital and then I'll have to get the IV and then I'll have to wait for the epidural. Like I was doing all the math in my head. Like when can I get relief? I'm so over this. I'm just in so much pain. So we run up to the hospital, go up to the labor and delivery floor and they get me into triage. And, I'm just kind of like frantic. And the nurse there is, very, very calmly says, hey, honey, just hop up here on the bed and I'm going to have to monitor you for 20 minutes. Right. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds terrible. I want an epidural. Right. So I hop up on the bed and I could only be on hands and knees. Like that's just, I could not even fathom being on my back.
Right.
And so I'm getting through a contraction and she said, okay, I'm going to check you after this next contraction. I'm like, okay. And she checks me and all of a sudden she goes, she's complete with a bulging bag. I need a room. And all of a sudden, like, there's this like flurry of activity and she's wheeling me down the middle of the hallway to a room. And I was like, whoa.
What's
and like
going
my first
on? Right.
thought, In my head, I was like, oh man, no, I'm not going to get that epidural. I was like, I better not have to push for 2 hours.
Right.
So they got me in there, and I forgot to mention I was GBS positive with both births. So I had to get antibiotics. They poked me right away to get the antibiotics. And I was on my hands and knees, just laboring and just, oh my God, in so much pain. I could not believe it. I was like, I think this is more painful than last time, but I was really trying to breathe through it. And the doctor came in and said, okay, well, whenever you feel the need, just bear down. And I don't know if I ever felt the need. I just, I mentally felt the need. All I could think was, I have to get this baby out of me. This hurts so bad.
Right.
And so I was pushing a little bit. And then, they say, oh no, your baby's heart rate is starting to decel.
Oh my
and I was like,
God.
oh my God.
I cannot do this again. Like,
yeah, it was like, oh my God, I can't do this. So they turned me on my side and they were like, you need to turn on your side. And I was like, oh, like everything was so hard. I was like, I can't. So then I turn on my side and I push a few pushes there, and they say, oh man, the baby's really decelling. We need to get the baby out now. You need to push as hard as you can. And I was like, I literally am. Like, I don't like this either. I pushed like just as hard as I could, and baby wasn't coming out. And the doctor said, listen, we need to get him out now. His heart rate is really going down. I suggest that we use forceps. And I was like, okay, do whatever you want.
Right.
And so then I had to flip to my back. And I think I did like 1 or 2 pushes, and she used the forceps, and there was a lot of pressure. And then I definitely felt the ring of fire and I definitely felt the baby come out this time. And he was out, and before it was like while he was coming out, he had already started crying.
Oh,
and I
nice.
was like, oh my gosh. And he came out and he was wah, wah, wah. And all I could say was, is that normal? And everybody's like, yes, it's good. It's good. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. And so they put him on my lap. He had like a really short cord. And they kind of put him on my lap instead of my chest. And all I could think of was like, am I responsible for holding this baby on my lap right now? Like, I'm really tired. Like, what? And so after a minute, they cut the cord and took him over, checked him out. Everything was great. And we got the golden hour and everything. It was basically the birth was way, way more painful than I ever could have imagined.
Right.
Like all those podcasts I listened to where people are like, oh, I felt some pressure and then I had a beautiful birth. Like, no, this was like I was being torn in half on my backside and I could not believe all those people who said they had a little bit of pressure and then they felt the ring of fire. Like, no, it was wild.
Right.
It was like, this pain is how is a species still going on?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Right.
But yeah, we did that. And what was I gonna say? Yeah. So then, babe, we had our golden hour. We had my natural unmedicated birth, and it was a whirlwind. It was 2.5 hours after I went into labor.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
My first birth was 30 plus hours, like in active labor, and my second birth was 2.5 hours. And I couldn't mentally grasp it.
Right.
I was like, this is insane.
Right.
I have a baby now.
Right. Wow. So did you have to get any stitches after the forceps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. With my first birth, I had the episiotomy. And then with this birth, she said, oh, you tore where you tore last time. And I was like, oh, cool. Because it wasn't terribly long last time. But this time, I think she meant it was in the same area,
right.
But it was much, much bigger. But it was still a 2nd degree tear,
okay.
she said.
Okay.
It felt worse. It took a little longer for me to recover than I was hoping.
Gotcha.
But I do feel pretty good now.
Okay. Well, good.
9 weeks out.
Good. I'm glad everything ended up being better this time. And I presume this time you ended up going home a couple of days later.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was just, I gave birth to him 11:40 at night and on a Tuesday. And by Thursday afternoon, the nurse came in and was like, when is your husband going to be here? I was like, oh, you're like, actually, you're seriously letting me go.
Right.
Before they would oh, you might get out today. And then I'd have to wait. And then they basically like kicked me out on Thursday afternoon. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're leaving now.
And no trouble with your blood pressure this time.
No, thank goodness. I had like one higher reading and I was like, no. And they said, it's okay. This is normal. And then it went back down to normal and I never had a problem again. And I was so grateful because I did not want to be on those meds again.
Sure. So when you look back on both of your experiences, how do you feel?
I feel good. I feel like I have a very well-rounded experience, I guess. I've had the crazy long birth with lots of interventions, and I've had the very short, crazy, wild, fast and furious birth.
Right. I mean, you are like the textbook example of birth is an unpredictable process.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Yes.
And it's all very mental because with the second one, I was like, there's no way. Like in my head, I thought I still had another day or so of laboring. And I got there and they were like, you need to start pushing, whenever you feel like it. I was like, wow.
Well, like what's going on? Right. Wow. So I'm just like, they're just, those experiences are just so entirely different. I think they're just really great examples of how you just have to be ready to ride those waves because you just don't quite know what may come at you in the birth process.
Yes, for sure.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. So then what is the one piece of advice that you would tell other women as they get ready for their birth?
I think, well, everyone told me this, but I didn't listen, but understand that birth can go any which way in any direction and not only be prepared for it, but just don't have an ideal birth planned out in your head. Like, be prepared. Don't just pack like a pair of pants to go to the hospital. No, I would definitely say, it's great to have a wish list, for a birth, but be prepared for anything that could happen, mentally prepare yourself and know what's out there.
Yes. Yep. For sure. Well, Crystal, thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast. I'm super grateful that you shared your story. A ton of people are going to learn from it. I know some folks may be a little bit scared by it, but this is the it's the reality.
Everything's okay.
Yeah. Everything's good. This is the reality of what happens. And we want to be able to share real stories. So you all are prepared for the things that are possible in the realm of pregnancy and birth. So where can women connect with you? You can say nowhere if you want. Are you on any social media or anything?
I am, Instagram's probably the best. My Instagram is just Crystal, Crystal, P as in Peter, Kicks, Kicks. That's my Instagram, and that's probably the easiest way to find me.
Okay, perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I'm so excited that you got to share your story, and I'm grateful that I got to be a part of helping you and your husband be ready for the second time around.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this has been really fun and exciting.
Wasn't that a great conversation with Crystal? And wasn't she funny? I really enjoyed talking to her, and I appreciate her coming on to share her stories. Now, after every episode, when I have a guest on, I do something called Nicole's Notes, where I talk about my top 3 or 4 takeaways from the conversation. And here are my Nicole's Notes from my conversation with Crystal. Number 1, I want to be clear. Please don't interpret this story as you shouldn't go to a birth center. Birth centers can work great for lots of people. And just in this instance, it just happened that she needed to be transferred to a hospital. What's really important to know is that there was a plan in place for her to be transferred to the hospital if need be. So birth centers can be great. So don't interpret this story as you shouldn't go to a birth center, because it definitely works for lots of folks. Okay, number 2, and this one is so important. You have to be prepared for the possibility that things may not go as planned for your birth. Birth is an unpredictable process that cannot be planned. I cannot say that strongly enough. And some people think that if you entertain different possibilities that things may not go exactly as you'd like, that somehow you're inviting that energy or inviting those things to happen that you don't want to happen. And that is not true. That is absolutely not true in the case of birth. As a matter of fact, I find that when people are not satisfied with their birth experience, it is most often because they were not prepared for the possibility that things could go differently. So they didn't know how to handle it and they felt out of control. Actually, when you prepare for the possibilities and you know the things that may come up, and you're ready to deal with it, if they happen, they don't have to happen, but if they happen, then you can take control as much as you can of the things that you can control. You don't feel blindsided in the process. So again, you have to be prepared for the possibility that things may not go as planned. And childbirth education is another thing that will help you with this. Okay. The next point, and I have a few with this one. The next point is I want to talk a tiny bit about the blood pressure treatment. I want to be very clear that blood pressure issues in pregnancy can be very, very serious. As a matter of fact, hypertensive issues in pregnancy is a leading cause of pregnancy morbidity and mortality. And not taking it seriously has led to a lot of unnecessary deaths, particularly among Black women. So I do appreciate in the story, although it was certainly challenging to figure out, her staying in the hospital with the blood pressure and things like that. I want to be clear that we must take blood pressure issues very seriously because it is a leading cause of death and we have to stay on top of it quickly in order to prevent bad things from happening. All right. Couple more Nicole's notes. Next one is do take time to process your birth if you need to. Understand that you can be happy that you and your baby are healthy at the end of the experience, but you can also maybe not be satisfied with how things went. And that is perfectly okay. I hate it when people say, oh, just be happy that you have a healthy baby. That is so dismissive of the experience and the thoughts and feelings and things that go into your birth experience. So if you did not have a happy birth experience or things didn't go exactly as planned, or if it was even really traumatic for you, take some time to process that, whether it's on your own or with a trained professional. And then the final thing that I will say for Nicole's notes is childbirth education is great for your partner too. It's not just for you. Childbirth education is also great for your partner. Crystal talked about how her husband also found the birth preparation course really helpful. I have lots and lots and lots of folks who say that they appreciate that they and their husband could go through the course together. And then they could ask any questions, or the birthing person can ask any questions and follow up in the Facebook group and things like that. So childbirth education is great for your partner too. Again, check out all the details of the birth preparation course at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. I would love to see you inside the course. All right. So there you have it. Do me a favor. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend. Spread the word. I want to serve as many folks as possible, and I would love your help to do so. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to me right now. And feel free to leave an honest review in Apple Podcast. That helps other women to find the show. And I just love what you have to say about the show. And also follow me on Instagram. Check me out there. I'm drnicolerankins.com/Instagram. I do what I call office hours there occasionally, where I answer questions about pregnancy and birth. I post helpful tips about pregnancy. I post things like Dr. Nicole Says, which are my thoughts about pregnancy and birth. So follow me on Instagram. That's at Dr. Nicole Rankins there. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Do come on back next week. And remember, you deserve a beautiful pregnancy and birth.